Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and visit us today. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, great. Thank you for having me. My name's Trevor. I went to college at a small university. I studied biology, and I grew up in a kind of a smaller neighborhood in the city. I'm from Los Angeles, and I have a brother. I've got a sister. My dad is a firefighter, and my mom is a nurse. So I've kind of had a background of kind of serving others, kind of helping the community, which is partly what drove me into medicine. In my free time, I like to do things like going to the beach. I really like surfing a lot, and I like to travel. And that's kind of a little bit of background about who I am and where I came from.
What are some of your favorite places that you've traveled?
I spent some time in India, which I thought was really interesting. It's kind of a very different place from the United States. Sights and the smells, the culture is very different from a Western atmosphere. Learned a lot about different cultures and how I react to those different cultures. It was a great trip.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about why you want to be a doctor?
Sure. So I think without coming off too cliche, is the basic reason I want to be a physician is just to help people. And I like science. I like the idea of anatomy and physiology and working with that kind of science to help people. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I like people. I care about people. And I think medicine is a cool way to interact with patients on a one-on-one level, establish relationships with people, overall improve their health, which will ultimately improve the way their lives are. So I think that's a great way to make a big impact on somebody's life through enabling their health.
Great. And why do you want to come to this school?
So I think some of the things that interest me most about your curriculum, number one is the research emphasized at your school. So I did my undergraduate research in neuroscience, and I saw that there's a couple of different neuroscience research projects going on, which interest me quite a bit. And I see that there's plenty of opportunities to engage in research, even from first and second year. So a lot of faculty that I can hopefully collaborate with. I read through the website, was very attracted to the curriculum, especially the fact that students can interact with faculty to change the curriculum. So it's kind of flexible and open and constantly changing, so it's always improving, which I think is good. And the last place is the location. So this is close to where I grew up, and I'd like to stay close to family because it provides a good support system for me. It's comfortable for me, and I think ultimately if I'm comfortable and have support, I'll do well in medical school.
Great. So let's debrief a little bit. What do you think about your answers?
I think the first question about tell me about yourself is probably everybody's least favorite question. It's very open-ended. Nobody really likes to talk about their self. I chose the route of mostly talking about who I am, where I came from, and what I'm interested in, not so much what I studied or what my interests are. I think it's easy to start to quickly move into why medicine with these questions because it's on everybody's mind too. So try to not do the medicine stuff as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you did a good job trying to keep this away from what your AMCAS application says of you. I mean, this is not, you didn't tell me about your research or your volunteer activities. You really didn't tell me any of that. You told me stuff that's more personal and about you, which is what the question is asking. So I think that was really appropriate. I think it would have been nicer if you kind of slowed down a little bit, kind of elaborated on some of this stuff. You seemed a bit nervous, a little bit rushed, which is pretty common for these types of questions, especially this first one, which is kind of like an icebreaker question. But I think you did a good job of trying to get those personal aspects. And as you notice, like the great part about this too is it's usually a conversation starter. Is you say something and the interviewer is usually able to kind of pick up on something that maybe interests them or they're interested and want to know more about. Like I asked you, where was some of your favorite places you traveled? And you talked a little bit more about India. That could really easily turn it into a conversation where, instead of the interviewer just asking, the next question on their list, they actually start just talking to you about mutual interests and things like that. I thought the next question, the why do you want to be a physician question, was very honest. Most people don't have some big epiphany in their life or some big spark that, ultimately made them decide to be a doctor. Some people do, and that's fine. But I think being honest is the important part here. You basically said, I want to help people, and this is a means to do it. Again, I think you could have expanded a little bit, maybe added in a couple experiences that really helped you kind of hone in on this or really substantiate your desire. But I think the honest answer was very, very good here. And then, why do you want to go to this school? This is always hard, but hopefully before you go and sit down at the interview, you've really researched the school. You got to know different aspects about it that interest you, and I think it was good how you connected it to yourself. The neuroscience, I'm really interested in this because I've been doing it and I want to continue it. So I think it's good to kind of pick up on those interests that the school has to offer.
Yeah, I think your cue of trying to slow down is really important. Everybody is going to be nervous, whether it's their first interview or their 10th interview. That first introduction with the person you're interviewing with is always nerve-wracking. I think if you know that's going to be an issue, telling yourself to kind of slow down at the beginning is a good cue. Most people will slow down later in their interview as the nerves kind of settle and the conversation becomes more relaxed. But knowing that you'll be nervous when you first sit down is a great tip to kind of cue in to slow down at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Any last tips for people that are trying to figure out, like, okay, these are the common questions. I'll probably answer them pretty similarly across all my interviews. How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, a lot of people are concerned that, I'll cue people to write down their answers when they're first practicing before they go into an interview. And people are worried that they're going to come off sounding rehearsed. But that's exactly right, is either you write them down or you do them 100 times throughout the interview trail. You're going to get accustomed to the answer. So I think it's a good idea to write down your thoughts before you get going, just so you can kind of crystallize what you want to say. But you're going to have to practice to make sure it doesn't sound or come off canned. But either way, you got to do that if you're repeating yourself through different interviews or if you wrote it down. So I think just getting that done from the get-go is important.
Mm-hmm.